Everyone, my name is Talia Hellman. I am the Point in Time Count Coordinator for Linn, Benton, and Lincoln County. And today I'm going to be doing a tutorial on how to fill out the Point in Time Count form, along with answering some general questions that you may have. So first I will start with what is the Point in Time Count. The Point in Time Count counts the number of people who are homeless in the United States. The data is used to measure homelessness on a local and national level and is published annually. This is done by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, which requires many continuum of cares to submit a point-in-time count in order to generate sheltered and unsheltered counts. This information is then used to determine different awards, which pay for many of the services we have. In addition to obtaining these awards for these services, it's also important to know the characteristics of the homeless living in each county in order to locally program and have systemic programming. So who are we counting? We are using HUD's definition of homeless, which is pretty specific. So in HUD's definition of homeless, it is a person is considered homeless only when they reside in one of the following places. In places not meant for human habitation, such as, but not limited to, cars, parks, the street, abandoned buildings. This also includes RVs as long as they are not mobile. It is basically any person that lacks a regular nighttime residence. This also includes any person living in an emergency shelter, in transitional or supportive housing, or any person fleeing a domestic violence situation with no subsequent residence or lacks the resources and support networks needed to obtain housing. This is important to note that HUD's definition of homelessness does not include persons living with family members or persons staying in a pay-by-week motel unless that pay-by-week motel is paid for by a charitable organization. So now that we have our definition of homelessness, it is important to be able to identify if a person can be counted for the point-in-time count. Once it has been identified that a person fits the criteria, you can now fill out the form. So this form should be filled out by an organization who is either holding an event or by a volunteer who is at an event for the person that is living within homelessness. This is important because many of the data fields need to be filled. In fact, most all of them need to be filled, because if there are too many spaces unfilled, then we cannot use the form and we have to throw it out, which is unfortunate because we want everyone to be counted, as it's really crucial to have an accurate count and everyone being represented. So we ask that the organization fills this form out for the individual. So in order to fill this out, the organization has an individual one, which is the head of household. And then if they have anyone else with their party, they can be included on the same form, even if they're not related. So the head of household is here. And then if they have maybe a daughter or a friend with them, they can say child and non-related. So the options are child, partner, spouse, other, non-related. Then it goes down to the first letter of the first name and the first 3 letters of the last name. This form is confidential. However, we really want to avoid double counting, so we have this information to avoid double counting people. We also have date of birth for each member of the household and a race and ethnicity, so they can choose between the following options. Question 4 asks about gender. HUD did a really good job this year of including more genders. We have male, female, transgender male to female, transgender female to male, doesn't identify as either, transgender, doesn't identify as either male, female, or transgender, and refused. So there are more options for that. In 5, we have veteran. And then questions 6 through 13 give more information on the person specifically. So question 6, do they have a mental health concern? Yes or no. Question 7, do they have a substance abuse concern with alcohol, drug abuse, physical disability, developmental disability, chronic health condition, etc. This is important to get more information on the people we are serving. If you go down to question 13, it asks if they were a released offender within the last 90 days, yes or no. And then question 14 is especially significant because this year is HUD's baseline year for youth living in homelessness. So it's really important that we have more information on youth who are homeless. So question 14 asks only for persons of school age, so K through 12, are you attending school, either yes or no. So if they are 16 and they should be in high school or an alt ed program, yes or no. So, and then question 15, where are you currently residing? There are the following options: street, emergency shelter, foster care, hospital, jail, treatment, transitional housing, owned, rental, doubled up, or refused. And then question 16 is the length of time they have been in the location above in question 15. So if I have been in an emergency shelter for the last 15 days, I would put 15 days. Question 17 is a little difficult because the date you became homeless, a lot of people might not remember that. So the most important thing is to get the year. After you obtain the year, it's possible to maybe jog the person's memory. Was it in spring? Was it in summer? Were you hot? Was it cold? Maybe try to get the month. I doubt it will be possible to get every specific information, including the day, but if you can, that's wonderful. If not, just get the year. And you'll notice that questions 16 through 19 is just for the head of household. Then question 18, number of times on the street or in a shelter within the last 3 years, and number of months on the street or in a shelter in the last 3 years. These are like question 17. They might be hard for the person to remember. Just try to get the best information you can. It is better to have an estimate than leave it blank. We are trying to leave the least amount of columns blank, and if at all possible, no columns blank. So just try to jog their memory, get an estimate. And then question 20, if you are not staying in an emergency shelter or transitional housing, where will you be staying tonight? So this is check only one, and they have the following options. And question 21, what caused you and your family to leave the last living arrangement? This is really important. You can check as many as that apply. So if the person has multiple issues that they have suffered from in the past, or maybe their rent was too expensive, they can check everything that has happened to them. Once you reach the bottom, you will see that it's different color highlighted. So this is for the organization. So question 22 is to be filled out by the organization that was filling out the count. So, and then question 27, we also ask that the person filling out the count put their information down. So let's say I am Jane Jones and I am from Jackson Street Youth Shelter. I would put Jane Jones, Jackson Street Youth Shelter as an example. And then we at CSC will fill out the rest of the information. So that is the count form. Another important thing about the count to note is that this count is for those living in homelessness. We want to provide the best services we possibly can and obtain as much help as we possibly can from HUD. So it's important to tell the person when you're doing this count that this is a confidential form and we are doing this because we want to have the best information possible for the people we are serving. So to introduce this form in a way that shows that we want everyone to be counted, and that's why we are doing this, because we want to provide the services and we want to do everything possible for those that we are serving in this county. Thank you so much for listening. My name is Talia Hellman. I am from Community Services Consortium, and I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone has. If you want to email me, my email is thelman@communityservices.us. Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for your support in the point in time count.